This is the review for the final exam. It's problem number 6. Solve the following equation, simplify the fractions if necessary. All right, for the first one, the first thing we're going to do is use the distributive property to distribute that 2. So when we distribute that 2, we're going to take 2 times 3, and we're going to take 2 times a negative 1. And we're also going to come down over on the other side, we're going to distribute that negative 2. So that's the distributive property that we're going to use. So for the first step, 2 times 3x gives us 6x, and 2 times a negative 1 gives us a negative 2. Bring down the negative 8 equals a negative 2 times 4x is a negative 8x, and a negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10. Now we're going to, on the left-hand side, combine our like terms. So we get 6x minus 10 equals negative 8x minus 10. Add 8x to both sides. So we get 14x minus 10 equals negative 10. Add 10 to both sides, and we get 14x equals 0. Divide both sides by 14, and we get x equals 0. Now you don't have to check this, but you always can check it. So you can substitute the 0 back in and make sure that in the original equation that the left side equals the right side if you have time. I'm not going to do that, but if you did check it, it does work. All right, let's go to the second problem. So this is a rational function, and I need to get a common denominator. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the x over 1 and the 5 over 1. So the LCD is 1 times x times 1, which is just x. So then I'm going to multiply x over x times x over 1 to get my common denominator, minus 3 over x already has the common denominator, equals 5 over 1 times x over x. All right, now that gives me x squared over x minus 3 over x equals 5x over x. Now, at this point, I can drop the denominator. It's not like it's really gone, but the only thing I have to worry about it is that for my domain, I've got to remember that x cannot equal 0. So if I get an answer of x equals 0, then it's actually no solution. So now I can drop it, so I can do x squared minus 3 equals 5x. And I want to subtract 5x from both sides, so I get x squared minus 5x minus 3 equals 0. That gives me a quadratic equation. So I'm going to try to factor it, but it doesn't factor. If it doesn't factor, then I have to use the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals, remember that the coefficients of the polynomial are our a, a b, and a c. So the coefficient here is a 1, that's our a. The negative 5 is our b, and the negative 3 is our c. So then we're ready to start plugging into the quadratic. X equals a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So there's the quadratic formula. Now let's plug into it. So we've got the opposite of a negative 5, which is a positive 5, equals the square root of a negative 5 times a negative 5 is 25, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is a negative 3, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. All right, so now I've got x equals 5 minus, plus or minus, the square root of 25. Now, a negative 4 times 1 is a negative 4, and a negative 4 times a negative 3 is a positive 12, all over 2. And then I get x equals 5 plus or minus square root of 37 over 2. And that can't be simplified, so that is the answer.